Let's get right into it. We'll start with the teams first. We're going to alternate. Manny, who are people sleeping on?
I think they're sleeping on UCF. Gus Malzahn has himself a pretty good squad. They weren't too disappointing last year in their first year in the Big 12. They won 6-7. Wasn't great, but he's got a better quarterback now. KJ Jefferson played for a lot of games at Arkansas, started a lot of games. He's back in a familiar offense, a familiar scheme that I think is really going to allow him to flourish. People forget KJ Jefferson was top 10 quarterback 2 years ago in 2022. Went into Florida last year, led them to a win in Gainesville, a very mediocre Arkansas squad. Now he's getting a UCF team with two 1,400-yard rushers, R.J. Harvey and then Penny Boone, who was the MAC Offensive Player of the Year at Toledo last year, spent a little bit of time at Louisville and then ended up in the portal again. And now they've got two 1,400-yard rushers. They've got some really good receivers on offense. This is a Gus Malzahn offense. To me, Big 12's wide open. I think they're a team people are sleeping on.
I like that pick, Manny, because I think the Dan Enos misstep at Arkansas hurt the KJ Jefferson stock in a way that was probably unfair. And people forgot the kind of guy that he was, when Kendall Browse was running that offense there. And I think that it's the Gus Malzahn offense is a really perfect fit for him. I think the Cam Newton comparisons to KJ are a little bit trite and probably not fair. They're very different players. But I do think this offense is a really good fit for KJ and what he can do. I like that pick. I haven't heard a lot of chatter about UCF in the Big 12. It's all Utah's the favorite, Kansas State, Oklahoma State. I might have another Big 12 team that I might want to talk about here shortly. But Grace, who is your sleeper team?
All right, I like that pick too, Manny. My first sleeper team is NC State. Even with all of their quarterback drama last year, they still went 9-4. They've got a super experienced quarterback this year in Grayson McCall coming over from Coastal Carolina. I think they have the best wide receiver in the ACC in Casey Concepcion. That defense is always pretty salty, and the schedule's pretty favorable. We're going to see them obviously open with Tennessee, and they have to play Clemson, which they've kind of gotten over the Clemson hump. But they don't play Florida State. They don't play Miami. They don't play Virginia Tech. I don't think they play Louisville. There's just been a lot of talk about, can Dave Doran finally get over the hump and this team win 10 games? I like it. I just feel like a lot of people have kind of written them off a little bit now that we're talking about Florida State and Clemson again. But this is a team with a really solid quarterback, a good defense, and a schedule that sets up nicely.
I like Tony Gibson a lot, that 3-3-5. He was known as the Baylor killer back in the day. Go back and look at what his defenses at West Virginia did against those high-powered Baylor teams. So that Tennessee Week 2 matchup in Charlotte, that's a little nervy because you look at what Pat Narduzzi did to them, a couple years back when they had Hendon Hooker. That was a little bit scary there too. Manny, I want to get your take on this in a second, but I have a question for you, Grace, because I had North Carolina State on my overrated teams this year. I saw them at top 25 and I bristled because I compared the Grayson McCall and Jamie Chadwell to sort of Brady and Belichick. And Grayson McCall plays a half a season without Jamie Chadwell. It did not look good last year. And then Jamie Chadwell goes to Liberty and turns Caden Salter into Superman. Why am I wrong here, Grace?
NC State had so much drama at the quarterback position last year, right? It starts with Armstrong, then we go to MJ Morris, and then MJ Morris is like, I'm out, I'm not going to do this. And they still kind of quietly won 9 games. And Robert and I is trying to figure out what's happening on a week-to-week basis. I really like his system. I think that we were all curious if it was just going to be, lights out fireworks when he reunited with Brennan Armstrong, and Armstrong kind of had his issues, but I just think that it's a fresh face and it's an experienced guy. He did a lot with a lot of chaos last year. And I think Grayson McCall can handle ACC defenses. I think outside of Clemson, and I don't know what Tennessee's defense looks like. You would probably know better than me on that one, but it's a manageable conference from a defensive perspective, especially for an experienced guy.
Manny, are you taking a shot of espresso or are you going back to bed on the Wolfpack?
I'm buying the Wolfpack, and here's why.
Heck yeah, let's go, Manny.
It's a big loss. Look, Peyton Wilson is a huge loss. He was Butkus Award winner, superstar on that defense, but they've got a system in place, right? So I'm not worried about the defense. And Grace is right. They were missing. I mean, they didn't really have a quarterback last year. And look, I got some intel on Grayson McCall. I spoke to him at the ACC kickoff. He considered like retiring from football at the end of last season because of a concussion. So why didn't he look good? He was taking some big hits his last year at Coastal Carolina. His wheels aren't the same. He's a little bit different. He's not going to run as much in the NC State offense. But look, a huge pickup. And I got this from just talking to people this week as far as transfer portal arrivals at different schools. They're really high on Jordan Waters, the running back from Duke who came over. And they think he might be the best running back they've had there in like 6 or 7 years. They haven't had a 1,000-yard rusher. Casey Concepcion was like all over the field for them. Now he's got help. He's got a quarterback. He's got Jordan Waters in the backfield. And oh, by the way, like I had somebody else, another personnel guy, say that Ohio State was like furious that they lost Noah Rogers, a top 100 recruit who went back home to North Carolina. He's only a second-year guy. But they're like, you put Rogers and Concepcion together with McCall and Waters, like this NC State offense could all of a sudden blow up and be really, really good. And this is, to me, without question, a dark horse team to win the league.
Thought nobody was talking about these guys, but Justin was blowing up my spot on the Big 12 preview here on my sleeper team. Give me the Iowa State Cyclones. Last year, it looked like it might be a disaster. They had an uncertain quarterback situation. You didn't love any of the options. There's all the noise about the gambling investigation. A year later, things look a lot sunnier. Rocco Becht kind of broke out a year ago. The Cyclones also lead the nation in returning production, according to ESPN's Bill Connolly, a numbers guy. That's 90% of production on offense back, highlighted by running back Abu Sama, who you last saw roaming for 276 yards in the snow against K-State in Snowmageddon. 82% on defense, the super strong front seven. If you've been listening to me long, you know I'm a big continuity guy, and they've got plenty of continuity in the coaching staff, on the field with Iowa State. 4 of their front 7 on that defense had more than 6.5 tackles for loss last year. Nobody's really talking a ton about this team. They didn't show up in the top 25. I think they can contend in a Big 12 that is wide, wide open. Grace, am I crazy? Or are you drinking the Clones Kool-Aid?
I'm maybe drinking the Clones Kool-Aid until the last 2 weeks. I think at Utah and Kansas State to close the regular season is, I don't know. I like it as a sleeper pick, and I think that's what I like about these sleeper picks, right? Is that we're trying to pick people that are genuinely like not super in this playoff conversation. I could see some smooth sailing for the first 10 weeks or so, but I don't know about those last 2 weeks. And then I also don't know, and you might know this, Ubben, just what the situation is with Daniel Jackson, their wide receiver who's out for the year. I don't know who slots in there, but I don't hate it.
I'm so big on the Clones. I'm not even going to talk about why their mascot, who is a cardinal, has teeth. There's a lot of questions there. I don't know if people have seen a cardinal recently or are familiar with the avian situation. I'm not even going to bring it up. So that's where we're at. Manny, who's your next sleeper?
Well, I don't know why they weren't ranked in the top 25. I mean, they won 10 games a year ago. I thought he did the best job of any coach in the league last year, coming in and making an immediate splash. But Louisville, like, they played in the ACC championship game. I know that they lost quite a bit on offense. Their starting quarterback, their 2 leading rushers, their top receiver. But they still got Ashton Gelati on defense, who's one of the best edge rushers in the country. A lot of those defensive players are back for the Cardinals this year. To me, I think people are sleeping on Louisville in the ACC. They're not giving them a whole lot of credit. Yes, they got a trip to Notre Dame. Yes, they got to host Miami. But I really think they've got some good players. One of them that came in that's getting a lot of hype internally is Ja'Cory Brooks, a former 5-star receiver who signed with Alabama. Alabama, of course, had that big exodus, right? They lost a bunch of guys everywhere after Nick Saban left. Well, it sounds to me from what I'm hearing at Louisville that Ja'Cory Brooks is going to be the next big thing in the conference. Everybody was kind of excited about Colin Lacey. I think it's going to be Ja'Cory Brooks who kind of becomes the breakout star. And they got some good transfers. I mean, you got Don Chaney Jr. in the backfield. Here's a guy who's been injured most of his career at Miami, finally healthy. Tyler Shuck, who won a Pac-12 championship at Oregon with Mario Cristobal. He comes over from Texas Tech. Yes, he hasn't been able to stay healthy, but he's a 7th-year guy. He's a guy who's won in the past, 20 career starts. Like, you replaced a lot of the guys that you lost on offense. And I think ultimately you just look at the job that they did there in their first season. I like Louisville, and I think they're a dark horse team to win the ACC as well.
I like it. Another Cardinal with teeth. I'm going to just let slide. Grace, are you in?
I think it all comes down to Shuck. I mean, he's just had so many injuries in the past, and that's not to say that he won't go off, but it's just such a crucial position. And we saw what Louisville and Jeff Brom did with Jack Plummer last year, and we know that he is capable of bringing in a transfer and lighting people up, but I think we just need to see it. To Manny's point, yes, like this is a team that despite winning, 10 games last year, playing for the ACC championship, we just really didn't talk about them much. But I feel like I'm going to need to see their quarterback situation unfold first.
I think I can see it. Grace, who's your second sleeper?
I'm not sure if you're going to yell at me for this or not.
I
Our
might.
second one,
Yourself.
you might. How about Texas A&M as my second one?
No, I'm in.
Are you in?
Go, Grace.
Are you in?
Go.
All right.
I almost picked them.
All right. Did you almost pick them? All right. Connor
I
Wegman's
did.
healthy. They still retain a lot of the talent that Jimbo left them with. They now have a coach who has brought some order and some discipline in the offseason. This defensive line is going to be pretty nasty. And their schedule is pretty favorable. I mean, you've got Notre Dame and Texas, but I'm looking at my notes now. They get Missouri and LSU at home. They avoid Alabama, Georgia, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Oklahoma. I just think they have the talent, and they just needed someone to install a little bit of stability last year. And Mike Elko, I am like buying all the Mike Elko stock. I think if you can win at Duke, you can win anywhere. And I think that he was the perfect hire to reinstate some order around here.
I think there's a lack of respect for A&M in terms of, well, they lost Jimbo. Well, it's Mike Elko year one. They lost all these. There's this transfer exodus. They're still a pretty good roster. And
they are.
A&M, when the lights are bright, it's not great usually. The lights are dimmed quite a bit here. I think he can kind of sneak in there, and we could be sitting here, in mid-November, and A&M's on the precipice of the playoff if they get it done there late. That's not the craziest thing that I've heard. Manny, where are you at on
said
these
too,
guys?
he had a quiet offseason. I like that, we didn't hear anything about them this summer. I kind of like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, I was just going to say Nick Scourton is the big new name for them on defense. Like everybody was talking about everybody they lost, but here's a guy who I think had a great year at Purdue last year. And you talk about Elko, and I mean, Duke won 16 games over the last 2 years with Mike Elko in charge. Jimbo won 12 over that same span. So you got a better coach, clearly. You got a guy who's familiar with the system. So I don't think it's crazy. I just think, the SEC is just so loaded. It's going to be hard for them to come out of it. But, they're in the best conference, and maybe they make enough of an argument to make the 12-team field.
Mm-hmm. Good pick, Grace. The Aggies.
Thank you, friend.
Listen, every once in a blue moon, the Aggies might be slightly underrated, and that might be this year. My team, we're gonna go to the G5 here. Everybody wants to argue about, Liberty, they should be in there, they should not. Everybody's just assuming Liberty is going to go 13-0 again, which they might. We'll see. Or point to the way that Boise closed the season under Spencer Danielson and him come back. I think we're forgetting a little bit about Memphis in all of this. That's my pick. They bring back Seth Hennigan. They have a tougher schedule than a lot of the competition. There may be, as I mentioned, some buyer's remorse with Liberty. I really think that there will be some real hesitancy from the committee to throw Liberty back in there if they're undefeated. The jewel of Liberty's schedule is probably going to be a road win at App State if they win that game, which is a big if. But if Memphis goes 11-1, they have a close road loss to Florida State. You better look out. This team, Rock Taylor's back. They got a great 1-2 punch at running back. Sutton Smith, Mario Anderson, coming over from South Carolina. He ran for 700 yards last year. Cleared out once Rocket Sanders came in there. There's some concerning losses on the offensive line that I don't love. McCollum Pounders off to Mississippi State. But the pieces are there for a really strong resume. And if they're sitting there, even 10-2 as an AAC champion, they're going to have a shot. So give me Memphis as a real sleeper to get to the playoff and be a team that is not really being talked about as much as they probably should be in the preseason as one of those teams that's right there. It's all Liberty. It's all Boise. You're hearing a little bit about Fresno at times, but give me Memphis. Give me Memphis.
I'm on board with that. That when I did my Audi specific predictions with Chris Vanini a couple weeks ago here on the pod, that was my pick to come out of the G5 level and make the playoff. I think people maybe aren't giving their defense enough credit either. They've got some good players on that side of the ball. And to me, they're going to be battle tested. Like you play at Florida State September 14th. Florida, it might be one of those games where they shock FSU. I would not be surprised if they went into Tallahassee and pulled one off there, because the Seminoles got a lot of new faces on offense. DJU at quarterback. So I agree. I think Memphis is probably a team they're just not getting enough credit. Grace,
am I on board here? Or am I on the right track here with the Tigers?
I like it. Yeah, look at us agreeing on all these. It's funny that you mentioned them because in the next segment when we do our sleeper players, I was super close to picking Seth Hennigan as one of my sleeper players. Like I just think he is going to be so exciting to watch. He threw for over 3,800 yards last year. They get a good win against Iowa State in the bowl game. I'm on board. I like it.
He's one of those guys that's like so smart that I would feel super nervous blitzing him, because you just feel like you're going to get carved up. Wherever you're coming from, he sees it. Pre-snap, post-snap, great decision maker. I'm a huge Seth Hennigan guy. Those are our 6 sleeper teams for the 2024 season. If there's teams you think we're sleeping on, you have an opportunity to let us know about it. Call the Until Saturday phone line. Leave us a voicemail. That's 316-462-9852. That's 316-462-9852. Leave us a voicemail. We love hearing from you guys. It adds so much to the show.